Hi, family. Hi. It's my 27-year anniversary today, which means that I have 27 years sober, which is kind of fun. Anyways, um, I just spoke to a couple of you who said that this group is been helpful for you so far, and that really makes my heart happy. Yeah, I just wanted some way to share with you all some of the stuff that I've been learning. And, gosh forbid if something were to happen to me and I get hit by a bus in a month or something, then I just don't want this stuff to go away without you guys all knowing about it. I paid a lot of money to educate myself around this stuff, and I just really want to share all of that with you so that if you need it at some point in time, you can refer to all of these jazzy stuff that I'm sharing with you and be able to find it and help yourselves or help someone else or share them with someone else in the family if they need it. So yeah, here we are. So far, I thought I'd do just a little recap today of what we've shared. So we talked about how the addicted brain works and how essentially the drugs themselves kind of pull you to use more and more and more by flooding your neural receptors and making it so that those receptors close off, and also making it so that your brain produces less of those feel-good chemicals, if you will, like serotonin and that sort of stuff. So, and we also discussed how when you start to take those drugs away, the brain doesn't repair itself like right now. It takes time. And in the time that it's trying to repair itself, it's also going to be asking you to use, right? All the same feelings that you had about using drugs or alcohol or whatever the habit is. Sorry, my cat is wanting to go outside. She's not actually allowed because I don't want her to be eaten by a bear. So if you hear her crying, that's what's going on. Anyway, so here we are. So we know that the neural receptors can get flooded. We know that that flooding in and of itself and that sort of feel-good dopamine makes us go after anything that feels good, to get a dopamine hit, to get another dopamine hit, to get another dopamine hit. But because these things flood those neural receptors, basically over time, some behaviors like watching TV or video gaming or smoking pot or drinking a lot of alcohol or gambling or porn or, God forbid, fentanyl, right? These things make it so that your body produces less and less dopamine over time and less feel-good chemicals, which kind of fucking sucks because then you're going after this stuff more and more, but you're getting less and less of a high until eventually you just kind of need this stuff to survive, or it feels like you need this stuff to survive. So we want to just be, if we can avoid getting into that spot, that's better. I mean, I wasn't smart enough to avoid getting into that spot, and still sometimes I have to watch it because just because my brain is sort of wired to want to do all of that. And I've been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, which means that I have low dopamine in the first place, which means that it's easy for me to want to go after anything that gives a dopamine hit. So then we talked a little bit about the window of tolerance, not a whole lot, and I kind of want to get back into that today. We also talked about how adverse childhood experiences, which I know that my mom and all 8 of her siblings had a shit ton, like off the charts amount of adverse childhood experiences. And then what happens is that we do our very best as parents to like raise that bar. And my parents actually did raise the bar or my mom did, from where she was at, right? But, and I raised the bar for my kids from where I was at, but that's still nowhere near where someone with, cozy, easy, breezy lifestyles are going to be. And what happens in those situations is it dysregulates our nervous system, and that can be really problematic as we go out into the world and we feel already uncomfortable in our bodies and with ourselves. And then that becomes hard to like just be in the world. So yeah, that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, because I think it's one of the most fundamental factors within myself about what sort of happened for me. So and we have adverse childhood experiences that can turn into post-traumatic effects or even post-traumatic disorder, which is not great, which is super shitty. So if we think about the window of tolerance, so you've got this sort of window here, and in this window here, you're doing great. You can feel, you can talk, you can have great conversations, and you're laughing, and you can even feel sad or even a little bit angry, but you don't feel out of control in that. You're like, okay, I'm feeling angry and we need to do something about this. And then you're searching for solutions and you're in that window of tolerance, right? And that's great. But when we start to edge up out of our window of tolerance, this is where we get into problems. So once we start to edge up out of our window of tolerance, now we're in fight or flight. And when we're in fight or flight, that's where we punch somebody in the face. That's where we scream and yell. That's where we break things. That's where we're throwing shit across the room. Guilty of all of those things. I have done all of those things. In one of those states, I can remember raging out and like bashing something on the counter. And then later on, when you come back into your window of tolerance, you're like, what the fuck was I doing? What happened there? Why did I do such a terrible thing? Well, that's what happens is our nervous system can get pushed out of this window of tolerance and into survival mode up into fight or flight, which means that in that spot, the part of your brain that can actually think, the part of your brain that can actually say, think about these resources that I shared for you, the part of your brain that can actually, function and talk things through and find a solution, it literally shuts the hell off, which is problematic, right? Shuts off. And then the hindbrain or the amygdala or the old brain, they call it, or the lizard brain, they call it also, steps in. And that's where you end up fighting your family with all the zealous that you might fight a bear with or a cougar with, because that's what that hindbrain is for. It's meant for survival. It's meant for those times when you need to kill or be killed. It's not meant for functioning with your family or functioning at work or functioning for all of that sort of stuff. And as I said, it shuts off your thinking brain. And like there's a bunch of stuff that can happen in that, but often it's accompanied with rage, it's accompanied with leaving, storming out, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But that's what happens when we're way up here. Another thing that can happen when you're way up here is that this sort of up here fight or flight, hyper arousal is what they call it, nothing to do with sexual stuff, just hyper activated, like you're really activated, you're up here, you're agitated, you're angry, you're all these things. And what can happen is you can get fucking stuck there. Your nervous system can get stuck in overdrive, at which point your brain is constantly about the next threat, about the next thing, about who you're angry at, about all this sort of stuff can get fucking stuck up there. And that's a real problem when you're trying to be a loving, kind person to your family. You're trying to show up for people. You're trying to show up at work and function, but you're in constant fight or flight. And it's exhausting and it makes your body sick because you're full of cortisol and all sorts of other stuff. And I only know this because I went through it and then I had a breakdown and then I had to figure out what the fuck just happened there, right? So now that's not the only place you can get stuck though. The other place you can get stuck is in shutdown. And so shutdown is down here, right? We've got our hyper arousal where you're freaking out and punching things or doing whatever, it's up here. Then you've got that middle window of tolerance, that's here. And you can get stuck in shutdown, which is down here, which is part of the hypo-arousal, which means that your brain, again, shuts off. Both of these things are dissociated. They're sort of out-of-body experiences. So you're dissociated in fight or flight, or you're dissociated in freeze appease. And in freeze appease, that's where you're willing to give anybody anything, like, okay, just take my wallet, right? Somebody's got a gun in your face. You're like, okay, just, you can have it. Whatever it is, you can have it, right? Or in this hypoarousal spot, this is where we see depression. This is where we see even sometimes major depressive disorder. This is sometimes where we see people who, like, sometimes when I remember raising my kids and sitting on the couch and being stuck, like not being able to move, literally frozen. So it can also come across as procrastination, come across as laziness, right? But what it actually is shutdown. What it actually is part of that freeze function where you don't know how to be in this window of tolerance. And so you know how to be down here and you just shut down, right? And it's not like a conscious, oh, I'm going to shut down. No, the body takes over, the hindbrain takes over and shuts you down, right? So these are both really problematic places to be. Like this is where we see things like, like I said, it can come across as laziness. It can come across as doesn't care. It can come across as all sorts of stuff in this hypoarousal because you're not feeling anything in hypoarousal. It literally shuts down all the things. And so when you're down here, things can get really hollow, really empty, really sad, really, and the guilt that comes with not being able to move, not being able to do the things that you want to do in your life, right? And so when we're either stuck way up here or we're stuck way down in this area, right? Oftentimes this is what in my last email, I said we need to develop coping mechanisms to deal with some of the stressors that we've been trying to cope with drugs and alcohol, right? And so if you're stuck down here, then you might want to be using uppers to get into your window tolerance here, at least feel fucking something, right? This is where we see people self-harming too. We see all sorts of weird behaviors down here so that people can just fucking feel something. Also, when you're up here and you're feeling like shit because you're activated all the time and you're grumpy and you're gross and you're yelling and you're doing all these sorts of things, right? Then what happens is we look for something to numb ourselves, to shut ourselves down a little bit and get into this window of tolerance, right? So often, and Gabor Mate says it, like lots of people say it, that using these things are so often just our best attempt to cope, right? Like we're just trying to cope. We're just trying to get through. And so this is where I said right at the beginning, we can have these disorders, we can have these problems, and we can be really good people but not have the coping mechanisms or the ability to sort of move ourselves up here or even have language for that. Like I didn't have language for that till I was well 40, right? Or move myself down into the window tolerance. So part of what we want to do then is we just want to start to monitor how much of my time am I spending up here in fight or flight? Do I feel numb most of the time? And if so, what helps me to raise my energy levels? Like I was speaking to someone earlier who was in freeze mode, shaking their hands. And then we started by shaking the arms and shaking the body and, moving anything, moving at all, right? Helps to unfreeze you. Sometimes it's going for a walk. Sometimes it's playing music. Sometimes it's doing other good things to cope. Lots of times it's talking to somebody who can help you get up out of that frozen, depressed, I can't fucking do it state, right? When you're up here, you need to do almost the exact opposite, right? Like you need to start to bring yourself down, you need to breathe, and you need to slow your breath down. And then you might need to like look around the room and come back to the room and do like, I'll share with you a little thing called the 5 to 1. So you might want to look around the room and then say, hey, I see a light, I see the outside, I see this, I see that. But like I said, I'll share that skill with you. And I might even have a recording of it too, because sometimes when your brain shuts down, it's hard to find the resources. And that's why we need each other. Because when we're in fight or flight up here, when we're shut down here, it's really hard to find those resources. So anyways, just know that that's, one more thing is that some of us, and this is what I found for myself, was that I was coping by sort of going from hyper arousal, go, 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 go. And I would even piss myself off to clean the house, right? If I could get pissed off, I could clean the house. And so that was me sort of elevating myself into fight or flight so I could fucking do something, right? And then back down into shutdown so that I could sleep and not yell at my kids or whatever. And so, sometimes we can fluctuate from fight or flight, boom, shutdown, boom, fight or flight, boom, shutdown, boom, flight or fight. And so we want to sort of try to widen that window of tolerance. The more we do this, boom, 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 smaller that window of tolerance gets. So part of being able to recover is learning how to regulate your nervous system and stay in that window of tolerance. And some of what I'll be sharing going forward will be about exactly that, because I think it's one of the most important things we can do in recovery, and it's missing from every single 12-step group out there. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I love you all so much. And I'm really just, again, this is not for anyone specific. It's just saying that, these things can happen. And I want the resources to be there for you when and if you need them. If you don't need them now, then revisit them later. If you need some support and you're having a really hard time with any of this, just reach out to me. You can text me in Messenger, you can text me by phone. I love you, I'm rooting for you, and I want for your success. And so, yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day, and happy birthday to Charity, and happy 27 to me. Mwah. Love you all. Bye for now.